A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, it is a period of melancholy existence, punctuated by the light of a television set. Writer-director Jane Schoenbrun conjures up a fable of all-consuming isolation and devastation that screams to be heard in an uncaring world. And if you don't hear it, there is still time. This episode will cover themes such as body horror, self-harm, depictions of suicide and suicidal ideation, gender dysphoria, and various dynamics of abuse. Please proceed according to your needs and comfort. The views and opinions in this podcast are solely those of the speakers and do not reflect the views of their employers.
Hello there, and welcome back to 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. I'm your host, Sam Marchioni. Joining me today, Jasmine Garcia.
You know, I anticipated the trans allegory. I did not anticipate the fucking changeling vibes.
River Lane.
New level of shrimp emotions unlocked, this time gender version.
And Ellie McConaughey.
Alright, I got 4 instructions for all of you. Park that car, drop that phone, sleep on the floor, dream about me.
Oh, God.
We're kicking off the new year with what I guess is an assembly of the Worlds Elsewhere podcast network.
Hell yeah.
Huzzah, I guess.
We know that it's eligible for yours. We know that it's eligible for Jasmine's. Needs to be eligible for mine. River, is it a rom-com?
No, it's queer.
The queerest of queer cinema. I saw the TV glow. Hold for gender non-conforming crying.
Hold for gender non-conforming crying. Hold for neurodivergent crying. Hold for crying over the fact that you, as a child, would always say you wanted to go home when you in fact were home because nothing ever really felt like home.
Have you ever felt othered? Have you ever felt like an outsider? Have you ever felt like something is just slightly to the left of what you think the world should be? Watch the I Saw the TV Glow, and maybe you'll get some catharsis too.
I mean, like, I was honestly... one of the things I did with my notes, because I first saw this movie back in March, or whenever it first hit theaters, Time is a flat
you
circle.
saw it in theaters and it was like, everybody has to go see it. And then I went and I saw it in theaters and I came out going, Ellie, what the fuck?
You know my taste by now, Sam. At this point, when I say you have to see something, you know what you're in for.
I did remark to Jasmine when we were watching it last night, within like the first 10 minutes, I'm like, this is an incredibly Ellie core film. In that it is sad in a very specific queer way. Its filmmaking has a lot to do with negative space and what isn't there. It is vaguely a period piece. Bridget Lundy Payne is there, and its soundtrack is entirely sad girl rock music where the lead singer sounds like she's singing in a completely different room than when the instruments are being recorded.
One of the things I was trying to do is I was trying to take notes on stuff that I hadn't, like, noted before. Like, I have, speaking of negative space, one of my favorite notes is that shot of Owen and his mom sitting on the bench is just like, it's such a good shot. But I was noticing, like, the abused kid allegory in there. Like,
it's barely an allegory.
Wait, can we call Owen baby boy? I don't know how to refer to Owen. I want to be respectful.
Owen, Isabel, Owens Bell, whoever you are, I have had you for a day, and unfortunately everything happened to you.
I'm going to go ahead and say that, like, we're still using Owen, we're still using he, him pronouns. He never claims otherwise in the film. That has been my stance on the film since it came out. I think that trying to refer to him as Isabel or by she, her pronouns just makes shit confusing. But my note was that, like, the comment that Maddie makes, you know, if my stepfather catches you down here, he'll break my nose again, is the sort of shit that I would just accidentally drop on my friends in high school. Just like, oh yeah, that's normal, right?
So I do want to clarify for listeners, I kind of broke the innator on this one. The Star Wars 6 Degree Checkerinator came up with 2 connections for this, technically. Jasmine Savoy Brown, who is in LEGO Star Wars All-Stars, gets a special thanks credit, and Chris Navarro, who's the ADR mixer, was an uncredited ADR mixer on Andor. So in the end, we kind of decided to split the difference and deem this a degree 6, because our lead, Justice Smith, was in The Get Down with Jimmy Smits.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sentence that's just designed to trip me up, I swear.
Also, I gotta say, knowing that Jasmine Savoy Brown got the special thanks credit, I'm almost surprised she wasn't in this as Isabel, actually. Or somebody.
I don't know Jasmine Savoy Brown well enough to know how old she looks, but the actresses who play Tara and Isabel look pretty young.
I mean, Jasmine Savoy Brown is in her 20s at this point, but she has a very youthful face.
The actress who plays Tara is actually a musician. She's like 24 or 5 at this point.
Jazz, I hate to ruin it for you. Jasmine Savoy Brown turned 30 this year. Or last year.
Oh, that's right, she did.
It's 2025 now.
Well, everyone's in this film had like the 2 leads both turned 28 on set. Like,
yeah.
No one looks their age.
Also, when have I ever indicated that I really like Bridget Lundy Payne as like an actor?
I don't know, but it feels correct.
Okay, fair. I did not like Atypical at all, to be clear. I watched 4 episodes. I'm like, I would pull my nails out before finishing this show.
Oh god. I've heard mixed things about it.
I primarily know Bridget from being in Bill and
Ted Face the Music.
Yes, I like that movie a lot.
As one of the kids.
Yep.
Does my immortal dad, Keanu Reeves, know I'd kill for him?
They were apparently eligible for my podcast movie Bombshell, which I have not seen.
Bombshell won something? What the fuck did Bombshell win? Never mind.
Makeup and hairstyling. I love the technicals with all my heart and soul, but they are a minefield sometimes. That's how Suicide Squad is on my eligible list.
Okay, nope. Happy thoughts about the devastating consequences of staying closeted.
Oh god.
What a sentence.
What a sentence.
Again, I was emotionally prepared for the gender feelings, because that's literally what all anybody talks about on this. What I didn't anticipate was that it's basically the conceit that your favorite TV show is, in fact, a real alternate dimension that you are, in fact, a part of. Any other person who has escapist tendencies, hi, nice to meet you all. Yeah, that was really what got me.
I read a lot of isekai webtoons. This is the worst isekai to be in.
Yeah! 100%.
I saw this with friend of the show, and I think friend of all of us, Justin.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The second time I saw it. And,
nice.
One of the things that he said, and I think that sort of like hit me, is like the trans allegory is very, if you know people like that, which obviously we all do, you all know me, and we all know River, and honestly Sam and Jazz are also there too.
Yep, yeah, nobody on this podcast is cis.
But if you know someone like that, then the trans allegory hits you in the face. It is upfront and it is blunt. But you can read it as a metaphor for a life half-lived, no matter what your gender identity. And that's one of the reasons I think it's such a great film.
There has to be a lot of wiggle room there, because only a cis deals in absolutes.
Boo this person! Boo!
I had to.
Would it make it more of an Ellie movie, even more of an Ellie movie, if I told you I was excited for it because I really liked Schoenbrun's previous film, a no-budget horror film with 2 actors who are never on screen together and nothing happens in it?
Wait, is that fucking We're All Going to the World's Fair?
Yep.
It is. Sam's coming to get me.
I swear to God, if it turns out to be a degree 6, and it becomes the first episode of 2026, Ellie, I'm calling witchcraft on you. Because remember, last year our first episode was The Lure.
Yeah! I have powers and I'm using them lightly.
If Ellie had powers, I feel like she would have used it for some bigger stuff, considering the year this is starting.
Yeah, I know.
Yike.
Yike indeed, and that's why this movie is so important and why I just... We don't talk about Justice Smith enough as an actor with the range, because too often I see Justice Smith getting crammed into movies that are quite honestly below his level.
100%. Like, I think the first time I properly saw him in anything was one of the Jurassic Worlds. Enough said.
I think Justice Smith has the 20s, like, I'm gonna do a bunch of things and see what I find joy in.
Mhm.
Like, he's done the Jurassics, he's done Detective Pikachu, he's done shit like this.
He was in the Dungeons and Dragons
He was great
movie.
in the
That's right,
Dungeons and
yeah,
Dragons movie.
I liked him in that.
He's doing whatever the hell he wants while he still can and hasn't been, like, completely typecast into one thing or another.
That's
And
good for him.
I respect him for it. And if he finds joy in all of it and continues to find joy in it, then we will be a much better cinematic landscape.
I mean, part of the problem is, and this is just sort of always going to be the issue with Hollywood until we fix a lot of stuff that we're not really much closer to fixing, is like the list of available roles for a Black actor, especially a Black queer actor, are just so small. So the fact that he's been able to experiment, to be in a Jurassic World movie, to be the lead in Detective Pikachu, I don't know, it makes me happy. He deserves it. Go Justice Smith, friend of my show.
Yeah, like, I always liked him, but seeing him on here, I'm like, oh no, this man is a superstar. This man deserves the world.
He did get a breakthrough award from Variety and the Golden Globes this year for both this and another film that I don't really want to talk about because it has a name that I don't want to say.
Yeah.
I will admit that I did not hear a lot of great stuff about that movie.
Me neither.
Including from Black critics.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It's an interesting concept.
Right? I was actually kind of like, okay, this could be interesting and also a fun send up to the series we don't talk to anymore. But no, of course not, because we can't have nice things.
Maybe we really are all in the Midnight Realm.
I mean, the suburbs are just the Midnight Realm.
That too.
Here's my thing with this movie. And I don't mean to sound glib when I say this, but I'm afraid, like, this movie got emotions out of me. It got emotions out of me. But I have, like, kind of a different reaction to it in a less visceral sense, because I hate that I'm gonna say this. I don't think I was tortured enough when I was, like, trying to figure my shit out for this movie, because I did what everyone did and had a gender-induced panic during quarantine, specifically school-mandated quarantine, where I was locked in a hotel room for 2 weeks while I waited to go into my third year of university because, you know, the universe and everything. By the time I started flirting with the idea that I was, you know, not completely cis TM, a lot of my fears came not in a, like, how have I not noticed this sort of way, but more in an interrogation of, like, am I not a girl because I've never identified with the misogyny patriarchy version of womanhood / girlhood that has been sold to me since I was, you know, born? Or do I not identify with girlhood because I genuinely do not feel that way? TMCR.
I had a very similar thing. I'm like, I feel fine being femme, being she, her, but there's sometimes when I'm like, I'm just like a consciousness being piloted by the world's worst meat mecca.
Yeah, to borrow a joke from John Mulaney, I am not a person. I am a brain moving a meat sack from room to room. Which is why I joke that I'd sell my gender to science, but they keep sending it back. And yes, I am aware that there are, like, neo-genders that describe this sort of feeling. You know, have I flirted with the idea of calling myself agender? Yes. Have I been introduced to the concept of void gender? Of course I have. But, like, at the end of the day, I don't want to break out a goddamn PowerPoint every time I introduce myself.
Yeah, that's a mood.
That was something I was sort of, like, alluding to. Like, I wasn't trying to be, like, dismiss anyone's gender identity here, if that's how that came across. But, like, the point I was making is I am the only trans femme on this particular episode. You know, I transitioned also during 2020, and as both River and Jasmine can attest, I wrote a very, very personal, very dark piece about this movie, about my experience of gender, of growing up around, you know...
I read it too and I cried.
It's devastating.
I will advertise my Medium page at the end of the episode. You can go read it if you want, listeners. But the end point I'm making is that, like, a lot of this feels very, very pointed about trans femininity in a way that I feel like it limits it, but it also kind of like it hurt me in particular. I joke on Twitter back when Twitter was like functional that the movie's actually about shipping Buffy and Faith and wondering why that makes you feel gay.
I want to expand that to this movie, and I'm gonna feel awful about saying this. It feels sort of like binary trans is ultimately where it's coming from, and that's perfectly valid for the point that this movie is trying to make. But it does sort of ring for me as a not that a please get weirder.
I don't know if I agree. I don't think it feels strictly binary trans to me.
I don't know if it's totally binary. I have heard that interpretation. My boyfriend, who I watched it with this most recent time, had a very different interpretation, which I think comes from who he is. I'm not going to go into it because he's not here to defend it, but the long and short is he interpreted Maddie showing up in the third act as a hallucination.
God, I hope not. That monologue's amazing.
Right?
Obviously, Jane Schoenbrun is not a only binary trans.
Yeah, no.
Jane Schoenbrun is non-binary. Jane Schoenbrun uses they them, and they rule. If you're listening to this, I was at your talk in Boston. Shouldn't have let that person talk from the text. That question took 20 minutes.
It got its point across, and I understand where it's going. I felt sort of like it's like a Lego piece that should connect, but it's just layered slightly wrong, or there's like a piece of gunk in between the like interlocking, so it doesn't quite sit right.
That is so ironic, given my response to it was it fit in spite of the fact I am not binary trans, and it felt like it fit me perfectly in a weird way, partially because it's been a running joke since I was growing up that they switched babies, or I'm waiting for the mothership. And I've embraced that to a certain degree, where it's just like, listen, if it turned out that I am actually a changeling or was sent here from some animated universe with a song in my heart that most people in this world do not want to hear, it would not really surprise me that much. There's always been this weird sense that I do not fit in this world, and the world is becoming increasingly hostile about it.
That's also a neurotypical...
You mean a neurodivergent thing?
No, atypical, yeah, that's what I meant. Neurodivergent, sorry. Thing right there. Because, like, you know, I've often felt, you know, what's the metaphor I use with my therapist? Like I'm a robot who got the wrong instructions and everyone else got the right ones, so everyone's mad at me for doing the wrong thing.
Oh, this is giving Rachel Bloom's "Tell Me I'm Okay, Patrick."
I was gonna say that, Sam. Same brain.
Seriously, Patrick, was I sick the day in school they taught you how to be a normal person? It just feels like there's something fundamental I'm missing out on. Like, is there an instruction manual? You get what I'm saying, Patrick?
I mean, like, the other metaphor I use is, like, it's a play, and everyone got their lines, and I never got my lines, so I'm just stumbling through it, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do and say from context.
And I mean, stack of pancakes, right?
Mm.
And Justin definitely feels like he's playing it neurodivergent as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think we should back up, because we're 20 minutes into discussion, and some people who haven't seen I Saw the TV Glow are probably like, what the fuck are they talking about?
I mean, I gave a basic sum up.
The actual context of the movie, I feel like, is the least important part of this movie.
I don't know if I agree with that, and I did sum it up, basically, like, again, it's the concept that the reason you are so attached to your favorite TV show as you, othered young person, is because that is actually where you belong. That's basically the premise, that Justice Smith's character, in his whole life as he knows it, is actually an illusion created by the villain of his favorite TV show, because he is actually the leading lady in the show who has been buried alive in this thinly veiled Buffy analog.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the show is like 60% Buffy, 30% Erie, Indiana, like maybe 10% Charmed. You're there. Yeah. The charm mostly comes in the fact that they remember to have a black person in the show, which Buffy did not.
Nope. Oh, Bianca Lawson, I'm sorry.
The real Mr. Melancholy was the Joss Whedons we made along the way.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I do feel like, I actually said this when I came out, I do feel like a lot of it a lot of what makes this movie even more universal than it is, and to be clear, I don't think this movie is universal. I don't think any good movie is truly universal. It's an argument I have about good kids movies a lot of the time. It's not a kids movie, it's for everyone. No, it's not. It's for kids. It can just appeal to everyone, because if you don't make it for someone, then it's not actually going to be a good movie.
Case in point, The Rise of Skywalker.
We have to put a lid on that argument until we get there.
I'm so excited to be on that episode. Anyway, I do feel like a lot of this movie comes out of... I don't think it could have been made or hit quite as hard as it did if Buffy hadn't like completely lost all its cultural cachet at the same time as Joss Whedon fell completely from grace. And there's a scene that almost directly references that. Like the at the end of the movie, he goes to rewatch The Pink Opaque, and it's a lot cheesier and uglier and less complicated than he thought it was. Which
is a shame, because I did love that ice cream monster design from the beginning. I did genuinely love that.
It's a great design, and honestly, that also kind of feels like a reference to when they uploaded Buffy to Hulu, and they used they accidentally mastered it in widescreen, so like camera equipment was in the shot now.
Which oof.
A+, guys, A+.
Oh, Buffy, I have such complicated feelings about you.
Buffy is not quite the first red sock in the cultural consciousness that we must all deal with, because now we have pink laundry. But it is definitely like one of the first for this selection of generation. And as somebody who is slightly disconnected from Buffy, I remember the first time I tried to watch it in like 9th grade, and I was just doing shots counting tropes because I hadn't quite done the growing up of the reason that this is incredibly tropey is because this is the origin. This is 0-0 for most of it. Mm-hmm. And then when I did that, I gave it another try, and then I got through like a season and a half, and I wanted to punt Xander into the sun.
Yeah,
that feeling
Xander
never
sucks.
goes away.
I'm gonna make everybody here really upset, but the show that I grokked for My Pink Opaque, Once Upon a Time.
I also said that, like, this is basically Once Upon a Time, but make it a horror movie, as when you think about it, it really should have been.
Well, every time Buffy is brought up, I'm surprised to find out that I still have very strong opinions. And like, if I had to, I should have known what happened was going to happen, because I felt like I needed a third big artist who was really important to my growing up, who has really let me down. The big three, and like the comparison point that I need to make with this is like, there are artists who are worse than Joss Whedon. Roman Polanski is a worse person than Joss Whedon, but Roman Polanski did not disappoint me. I've gone into every single Roman Polanski film knowing who he is.
Well, right, because Roman Polanski did the shit he did before we were sperm, I think.
Precisely. He did his shit. He raped that kid in the 70s, to put it bluntly. I don't like talking around that. I feel like Roman Polanski does not deserve me using metaphors.
No.
The big three are Joss Whedon and Buffy, J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter, and now Neil Gaiman is our big third one. Just people who I felt really mattered to me, and now I just have to carve them out of my heart and find out what's there once they're gone.
Yeah, that's more or less my stance too. Like, I considered all of them my heroes, especially as a writer, and it just really sucks to know they're all horrible people, and one of them actively hates me and mine.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Maddox shouldn't have been a self-insert.
So I have this thing where you can, like, if you've read my work in any capacity, you can tell that I came of age post Jomps Wobbin, as I prefer to call him.
We should start calling him
stupid.
We should start calling him Josh Pemberton, which is the name, the fake Joss Whedon name they have in the credits of The Pink Opaque.
I'm game for that as well.
Yeah, I prefer Jomps Wobbin. Thanks, Mikey Newman. From Movies with Mikey for that one.
It's about picking the name that will piss them off the most.
Yes.
True. That's why we call a certain writer Joanne.
Exactly. So, like, you read my work, and I very clearly came of age post-Jomps, as it were. The first Avengers movie came out when I was 12, and I have never known peace since. Actually, since it came out in May, I was probably 11, but that's neither here nor there.
Power word age is in the house, I see.
I feel like this is part of why you didn't feel tortured enough for this movie. I think the generational thing is a big part of it.
Yeah, because, like, when I came of age, we were starting to have the trans conversation clumsily, but we were trying. And by the time I was starting to think, like, maybe I am, non-binary, like, if I'm like, I say that I had my first gender crisis in quarantine. No, my first gender crisis was in the bathroom of a Disney World restaurant as I realized I had been injured that day and I was sitting on the toilet having a goddamn panic attack trying to figure out why I felt weird with that sudden realization. And that's neither here nor there. But the point is that, like, I had already been armed with the vocabulary to start futzing, as it were. Mm-hmm. Like, I knew what the term trans was, and I knew I had a trans friend by that point. I knew what the term, gender fluid was, and I knew what the term non-binary was. And so with being armed with that, I could start to fiddle around with it mentally and play around with the idea of, having a Miracle Max name because it's not a dead name because it's still alive for legal purposes. And, futzing around with that meant that, like, by the time I came out, I could tell my mother, hey, I'm non-binary, with a shitty joke about identifying with the Philadelphia Flyers mascot, Gritty, which sucks because I'm an Islanders fan.
God.
And then having her get off the phone call me like several hours later, being like, okay, I did some research and I need to know what I am still okay to call you.
Your mom rocks.
That's a good response, all things considered.
Yeah, and like, that's the thing, is that, like, because I am post this sort of, I'm gonna say this and I understand that it's probably not the best word, but it's the best I got, this brutalized ennui, as it were, or this tortured ennui, like, I already had good examples, so I'm not coming from a place of pain when I realized who I was. I was coming from a place of bizarre amounts of confusion because, like being able-bodied, you never expect it to happen to you,
All of you have apparently read that thing I wrote. Obviously, I'm coming from a place of, like, pre-transition Ellie was not a functional human being. She was kind of a walking corpse in a lot of ways. So I will admit that, like, a lot of this, the second to last scene of a person standing there screaming in pain and fear while everyone just ignores him, it hit me very hard. The first time I saw this movie, I had a date, like, right after to see The People's Joker, oddly enough. And I had to, like, run around Manhattan trying to find a Starbucks in the bathroom to fix my makeup because I had cried half of it off. I was sobbing from the planetarium scene forward.
I believe it. We're talking a lot about how this movie made us feel and not nearly enough about how masterfully done it is.
It's a beautiful film.
It's one of those movies where it's like, when a film is good, you don't notice.
I mean, you do notice, but you can't quite put your finger on what exactly it works. You just know how it made you feel.
I've been trying, like, on my more recent rewatches to, like, get myself enough emotional distance to hammer out its techniques. Like, I mentioned the shot on the bench, and part of the reason I love that shot is Owen looks so really small and tight in the corner of the frame, and the bars of the bench and the fence behind him look like a cage. He looks like he's caged in.
Or the fact that, anytime they're in a car, he's, like, not sitting properly, he's laying down, and the way it's framed is you can barely tell, like, where he is in space.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of hiding tapes in a dark room.
Or how often the camera follows him, like, so we don't see his face until he's walking across that football field in the climax.
Or the amount of bisexual lighting.
Yeah.
Just from the jump, like, immediately.
Why didn't I have that parachute growing up in elementary school? Why was my parachute the boring red and green and yellow and blue one? I want the transgender bisexual parachute.
I even told River, it's like, okay, after now seeing all of this trans and bi lighting, I want to find anybody who thought that this didn't realize this was clearly such a trans allegory and smack him in the face.
Or even just, like, I mean, the music is incredible, but, like, I pointed out when I wrote about it, like, they don't say the line that I feel like is the takeaway from the film, there is still time. It is written down so the camera can stare at it, can be like, look at this.
No, that shot with with it written in chalk was just devastating.
I know that it wouldn't have been necessary to show in the film, but all I can think about now is the idea that, yeah, there is still time, but at some point, rain's gonna come, and that message is gonna be gone. And I need everybody who's listening to know that message will never be gone. There is still time.
As long as you are still breathing, as long as your heart is still beating, it is never too fucking late.
Your heart does not even need to be in your chest for it to still be beating, apparently.
I mean, that's one of the things that I really love. That is a Once Upon a Time thing, isn't it? They take out people's hearts in that show.
Yeah, again, this is Once Upon a Time if it was good. This is Once Upon a Time if it was good.
I'm leaving. Goodbye. No.
Listen, as much as Tara walking up with distinctly Buffy's axe to fight the demon, and the fact that the enemy is just one long Smashing Pumpkins joke, and it all.
George Méliès' Voyage to the Moon is getting a lot of attention in horror movies this year for some reason.
I will also say that the equal and opposite, as somebody who also has trans mask friends, and is more that end of the, if we had to pick a side gender spectrum, Dean Winchester is also not an active gender.
Yeah, that's fair.
The point I was sort of like circling around making is that like one of the things that I love about it is I have heard people, especially oddly enough trans mask people, sort of interpret it more negatively, interpret being buried as like a suicide attempt, which, it's not there. But like one of the things that I feel like is important to interpret, especially about There Is Still Time, is like if we read Maddie as Tara, she's not burying herself. She was already buried. Mr. Melancholy already buried her. You just have to realize that you're buried and start to claw your way out.
Yeah.
And I like that we don't see Owen make the decision of what he's going to do now that he sees it, now that he knows that he's not hollow, now that he sees what's inside him. Because that's still not going to be easy. That's still going to be hard. That's, I'm trans, I'm transitioning, I'm taking estrogen. But like, it's still going to be tough. It's still going to be, being buried alive might not be a metaphor for a suicide attempt, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. It is tough right now to be trans, but I do think the final scene of the film is about how it doesn't matter that it's tough. It's worth it. It is worth it to be who you are.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, Jane Schoenbrun even said, like, yeah, I guess it could have made it that Owen fully accepted him or herself by the end, but that would be you would need a whole new movie to get to that ending for it to feel authentic for me. And like, yeah, I can see it. Like, Owen is a mess.
Owen, my baby.
Again, I've had him for a day, and unfortunately everything has indeed happened to him, so the best I can do is try to reach out a hand through the dimensions, I guess.
Again.
You can help if you're a cis person listening to this, who watched this movie and wanted to had Owen for a day and would do anything for him. Metaphorically, you can help people dig themselves out.
Hell yes.
In equal measure, my Venmo is...
Save it for the GoFundMe link at the end.
But, like, I think the other thing, in terms of the digging yourself out metaphor, TM, is it's a process to dig yourself out, and there is that level of fear, and that fear can be worth it. But we also must admit we live in scary times, and shit is prohibitively expensive. There's a reason that my other name is not a dead name, it is a Miracle Max name, which means it's mostly dead, but partially alive for legal reasons. The prospect of having to change my name in 4 different locations, hell, so much money.
Like, one of the things I read, and I might be wrong about this, but if I wanted to change the gender marker on my birth certificate, I would have to go to a judge in my birth state. For context, dear listeners who don't know this about me, my birth state is Alaska. I live in Connecticut, and my dad's not a judge anymore.
Boo!
For me, it's a case of, to change my name, I'd have to do it at the state level, the government level, the provincial level, and the city level of the city I currently live in.
Eep.
That's 4 different locations. That's not even, like, talking about my goddamn birth certificate. And so, for legal reasons, and for monetary reasons, that name is a Miracle Max name. So, like, I respect the fear. I acknowledge the fear. And for a lot of people, that fear is a hell of a motivator. But I also must admit that, like, if you are one of those people where it's not a fear, it is a monetary thing, understandable, have a nice day.
No, 100%. Like, I don't think this movie is necessarily shaming anybody for staying in the closet for whatever reason. It's just pointing out, well, inevitably, yeah, that not literally what happens to Owen at the end, but something like that will kind of be a consequence of that. It's not condemning anybody, it's just repressing who you are is going to hurt eventually.
Either it breaks you or you break it.
I did find a Tumblr post that was basically talking about how it is the horror of inaction. The scary stuff is going to happen to you anyway, and surrendering your agency to it just means that it's going to hurt more when it catches you.
Which is part of why we are firmly against doomerism in this current political climate.
Yes, that's not going to help.
Even if it is a semi-understandable knee-jerk instinct, you have to overcome the knee-jerk instinct.
Right, because to bring back another John Mulaney quote, you can't keep burning the candle at both ends.
I mean, like, slightly poetically, in my case, for me at least, the opening time period, 1996, was also the year that I was 6 years old, which some of you might know is the year that I got into a screaming fight with my teacher because I had to fill out a paper that said whether or not you were a boy or girl. And when she told me, no, you're a boy, I thought she was lying.
Ooh.
Again, you're devastating.
And I didn't transition until 2020. That was the year that I finally said to someone that I want to be a girl and started taking steps to be that. So you can repress for a long time. And if you need to for financial or safety reasons, there is still time. You can do it when you're safe. But like, there is a consequence to a life half lived. There is a consequence to lying to yourself. And that consequence isn't trivial. It might be cheaper than the consequences of being honest with yourself, depending on your circumstances, but it is not nothing.
This movie is fascinating in ways that it is hard to, like, it's not hard to vocalize. We've spent, God knows how long trying to vocalize it already. But it is also, like, it's fascinating in ways where it's like, if someone, like, put a gun to my head and asked me if I would recommend this movie, which basically are the people who are going to be getting this recommendation cool about a lot of things real quick.
No.
Yeah.
Like, I love this movie. I'm not recommending it to my mother.
Oh, absolutely not.
I'm a little bit older than you, River, as indicated by Ow. And at a certain point, you do get, especially if you're like a film nerd to the degree that you and I are, you do eventually get comfortable with like, oh, you should absolutely see it. You're going to be real mad at me after.
What my thing is, like, I know why Ellie recommended this movie, but, like, for the future listeners, as you are hearing this and thinking about movies that I would like to do, please know that I am the kind of autistic who feels things very deeply, and empathy is a fucking bitch.
Hell
So,
yes.
like, the horror to me is seeing somebody in pain and wanting to be able to help them, and I can't help them, which is, again, Owen, my baby, I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I want to believe I would be a person who hears you screaming at a point when you think nobody's listening, but, like, I know that feel, my dude. I know that feel.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's getting my hang up is I don't relate to Owen. I relate to Maddie because I am the queer friend that, even though I was the last to come out of my, well, not the last to come out of my friendship, that instinct actually belongs to another friend of mine, but I'm the one that got out, I am the one who now lives in a fairly liberal city. Fuck Doug Ford. All my homies hate Doug Ford. I can follow a bunch of queer meetup groups on Instagram and go out ice skating or go out to coffee with a bunch of queer people and learn what they're doing and go to a queer bar that's one of the oldest that's still standing in North America, and be okay and be relatively safe about that fact. And meanwhile, every time I go home, my friends are complaining about the fact that, like, they want to meet more queer people than the friends they knew in college, and they're having trouble because there is no easy way to do that in my even fairly liberal hometown because the network just isn't there. So, like, none of my friends are still closeted in that way, but I still get the sense of, like, I did leave town, and I'm the one that, changed their name and escaped. So, I have not buried myself alive and come back out the other side, but I have escaped. I did get out of the town that I feared was going to kill me. In less a literal sense and more a metaphorical sense, because I hope this song finds you well. I just wish you'd get the fuck out of our hometown.
You even said that Maddie was very me-core as well in the midst of our trauma bonding / watch party.
Maddie is you core in the you look at a cool sapphic on television who fights demons and say, God, can I fix her or make her worse with lesbian love?
And it's also me core.
It is very Ellie core as well.
Maddie was made for Tumblr lesbians. She's skinny, she's white, and she's mean, and she's got like the goth punk kind of aesthetic going. She's perfect.
Oh yeah.
I know we see less than like 2 minutes of the actual show. Man, if that show was real, there would be a thriving Isabel Terra.
Yeah, I was about to say, I saw a couple of other posts
100%.
that's like, why am I not in the universe where the pink opaque is real and writing Terra Isabel / fiction?
Listen, nothing is stopping you from writing it anyway.
I'm sure that if I go on AO3 right now, there will be a whole subgenre of I Saw the TV Glow fanfics that are just like making up the show.
There are so many details that get dropped in that one long take where Owen's walking down the hall.
Yeah.
But the one that sticks out to me is Isabel's magic dress.
Yep.
What the fuck does the magic dress do? I need to know what the magic dress does.
I don't know, but it is fabulous.
I think we should just like give Jane Schoenbrun $50 million a year if they want to use it to make a movie or to make another season of The Pink Opaque. They can do whatever they want. They don't have any restraints.
Having checked AO3, there are currently 33 fics with the search result of The Pink Opaque.
Nice.
How many fics are there total?
Of I Saw the TV Glow?
Yeah.
50.
We need at least 19 more.
We do need at least 19 more, and I like one of the ways I like check on, how do I put this without sounding like a lunatic, on how much a certain pairing or a certain relationship is like percentage of fics are about X. For example, the example I usually go back to is, and this is a fandom that I'm not a part of anymore, but I was pretty big into in the 2000s. Over half of the Supergirl fanfics are Kara Lena. They're 80% of the top fics are just them. It is seized that fandom. So like 33 out of 50, that's what that fandom is about on AO3. That's what it's about. It is about Pink Opaque retellings.
Yeah.
I will say one of them is a Disco Elysium by way of I Saw the TV Glow.
Oh my god.
Which is also incredibly Ellie core.
Person who writes that fic, I have 3 questions. Are you single? If not, are you polyamorous? And third, do you date girls?
They're a fan of I Saw the TV Glow. I'm guessing the third one is a yes.
It's called I Saw the Disco Ball Glow. I am sending it to you, Ellie.
Thank you so much. You've made my weekend. Christ.
There's a lot of love in this room, and why not? Because we've all been through a journey together.
As Jasmine can attest, we immediately got out of the movie and said, right, what are we watching as a palate cleanser? And then watched the Liza Minnelli episode of The Muppets.
I knew it was going to be Muppets. I don't know how I knew, but I knew it was going to be Muppets.
Because it's about the lingering catharsis and the idea that like there are certain shows that I watch as like if I need a palate cleanser where I just need a giggle. Like if I just need a giggle, I'm watching Phineas and Ferb. If I need to exhale some leftover catharsis, I am watching The Muppets because those bitches have made me feel every spectrum of emotion via green pieces of felt with ping pong ball eyes. I swear to Christ, when we do the Muppet movie, it's game over.
The central thing about I Saw the TV Glow that I think explains my relationship to showing it to people is it's up there with Gideon the Ninth in terms of, I recommended this thing to people. I am collecting your responses to the end of it. Current winner for this one is for I Saw the TV Glow is just a friend like posts in our mutual Discord watching I Saw the TV Glow. Oh, this is kind of reminding me of Buffy. An hour and a half later, fuck, God, Jesus, fuck.
Yeah.
I think after I finished it, I told you I would be billing you for my therapy.
You did. You are also very high on that list. Hey, Sam, can I trick you into reading Gideon the Ninth at all?
Absolutely not. I barely read anymore if it's not on AO3. And that is a problem for the stack of books that I have out for dramaturgical research from the library.
Oh, God.
Rip.
I think my immediate response was after that was I forced Jazz to stay on the call while I made a drink because I don't drink alone in my apartment if I can avoid it. And immediately started talking through the process of, am I actually, like, a dude? The answer is firmly no. I cannot imagine being he, him all the time, but I am very attached to they currently, but it's a long life.
And that's perfectly wonderful, honestly.
Yeah, shout out to Laura Crone for that thought processy method, because that has helped a chunk from her She's the Man episode.
She's the man.
She's the Man is a really good comparison point, because I feel like... No, I'm going somewhere with this. Give me a second. One of the central things that I've noticed about, like, queer people is that there are a handful of pieces of media that we all kind of got, like, depending on your age bracket, you worked to see yourself in this movie. You know, for trans femmes, I've noticed a lot of us really like Ranma One Half for some reason.
Gee, I wonder why.
It all comes back to the gender fluid. The good gender fluid is the water from the spring of drowned girl. The bad gender fluid is the Luna juice.
I mean, like, I don't want to be to tell on myself, but one of the things that was like, there were no signs, is I remember literally saying to my mom after we watched the like first 3 episodes of Ranma One Half, I don't get why he's upset about turning into a girl. I'd be upset I had to turn back.
The answer is toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, She's the Man, I don't want to speak for trans masks. I am not trans masculine. Being a dude seems great, not for me. But I do think, from what I've heard, that She's the Man is one of those movies that a lot of trans mask people sort of, like, forced themselves to see themselves in it when you needed that lifeline in a bad situation. So having something like this that is not just... that may be mainly for trans femmes, but is something that is intended for us. Mm-hmm. I hope that a lot of younger trans people get a lot of value out of that, because I would have murdered for something like this. When the first actual appearance of a trans woman I can remember seeing is in Ace Ventura.
Oh,
yikes.
I wonder why it took me 30 fucking years to come out.
Yeah, that is kind of the thing. Like, for most of us on this call, representation quite like this was a fairy tale, basically. Mm-hmm. Like, I will sometimes just kind of look at some of the kids programming that's come out in the past 10 years and I'm just like, God damn. On the one hand, I'm so happy for the queer kids growing up right now, but on the other hand, God damn, what did I lose by being born 10 years too early?
Shout out to the Hunters of Artemis for teaching me the idea that, like, I didn't have to be a sexual being to be complete. And
also, Rick, sit down. Rick, asexuality is a thing. Rick.
It's fine. He's better at saying sorry. And like, you know, in terms of non-binary representation, shout out to Mason Alexander Park's entire existence.
Hell yes.
But especially, the Cowboy Bebop live-action adaptation was bad and should not have happened. However, the idea of making Gren explicitly non-binary more so than they were in the show, as well as turning them into a bit of an informant, iconic. All I ever wanted for that character.
What struck me is I was thinking about, like, so the final scene of the movie takes place in 2026.
Yeah.
Which, to me, is like, can somebody sit Owen down and get him to watch The Owl House?
I mean, like, that's sort of the other thing. Like,
Owen, you would have loved The Owl House.
Yeah.
You know, I was really, when I was in high school, for reasons that, again, became pretty obvious once I got to be older, I was really desperate to see media with queer women in it. You know, I thought The L Word was one of the worst pieces of shit I ever seen. I still watched 3 seasons, to be sure. I've seen all of Strawberry Panic twice. I'm so glad that, like, some poor lesbian out there's first R-rated movie that they're seeing way too young is going to be Love Lies Bleeding. That person is really lucky.
Really lucky, or is going to be irrevocably changed in a way they don't understand. They might have their box cutter moment, is what I'm saying.
Well, this better not awaken anything in me.
Hey, Sam, Love Lies Bleeding is absolutely eligible for this podcast, right?
Yes.
Of course it is.
Okay.
Ellie, whenever you ask me if a movie is eligible, the answer is basically always yes.
Sam's podcast is basically the wild card of all of our podcasts. Anything that the rest of us can't cover, chances are Sam can.
The whole point of this podcast was to expand my cinematic horizons, to get me out of my comfort zone of mainstream Hollywood, big budget action stuff.
Is it working?
To some extent it's working, because, you know, last year we saw some really cool stuff, like Daughter of the Dawn and The Lure.
I think, if nothing else, this project is sharpening your tastes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best thing you can get out of a cinematic horizon, is being able to see something and go, I know who this audience is for, but I am not part of that audience, and that is okay.
I literally said it in a couple episodes ago on my podcast. Like, I think that every movie, from great stuff like this to, like, what's another movie I watched for a podcast? Bushido Blade.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. Or one for mine. Lady Be Good. Like, was that movie a piece of crap? Sure. But, like, I feel like every movie I watch makes me a better critic and artist, except for very specific pieces of art. So, like, I think that so long as you're expanding, as long as you're seeing new stuff, pods like this are always going to be worth it.
I mean, listen, part of Owen's problem is that he is static. He is keeping everything as samey as humanly possible. He is going through the motions. And I think at the very least, the fact that part of our goals with these podcasts is to be trying new things and exploring new things, I think that means that at the very least, we are doing quite a bit better than that poor guy.
I will say I could have used a little bit more warning on the box cutter as somebody who's got a self-mutilation squick.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, as soon as I saw him pull that, I was like, oh no, River, don't look.
Yeah, I was basically like, all right, I can't do this. This is like, that is the one, like, horror aspect that I'm, like, still a weenie baby on, is I can't.
Yeah, it was brutal to watch that in a theater. But also, like, that was such a cool effect. Like, I want to know how they filmed that, because it seems like it was a practical effect, given how it was also flickering off, like, the towel dispenser and everything.
It was such a powerful moment.
I think it was probably a fake torso. Yeah, fake torso.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
I will say that saying Owen is going through the motions is kind of funny, given the Buffy analog. Isn't that one of the songs from Once More with Feeling?
Every single night, the same arrangement. I go out and fight the fight.
There it is.
How do we get you back to your Pinko Pig thing?
I mean...
Good question. Let me know if you find out.
You can't. This is the world. We just have to make it more like the Pinko Pig.
So we're all getting the little ghost tattoos on the back of our necks? We're all getting that?
It's tempting, honestly.
Straight up.
That is an instantly iconic look. And I will say, like, if there's one thing I 100% get with Owen to a degree is, even if it turned out my mothership came back, or I did find out that, the deep down suspicion that you do not belong in this world was in fact 100% correct, would I probably go, yes, but not without you guys.
Aww.
One of the sticking points I had with my boyfriend chatting about this film is he sort of read leaving the Midnight Realm as leaving those people, those humans, those, friends and family behind. And I think that one of the reasons why I sort of like, it connected with me in a way it didn't connect with him, is like, I read them not necessarily as literal people, but as metaphors for the reasons he has created, or the people trying to hold him back from being who he is, from transitioning, from being Isabel. So, like,
oh my god, it's a Black Mercy.
That is a perfect
It's the
example.
Justice League Black Mercy episode, The Man Who Has Everything.
Yeah.
God.
Or the Batman episode, Perchance to Dream.
Well, I think that, like, in an idealized version of that, or like a version where he gets to be Isabel, where he gets to wake up, his mom will still be there, and he will still have friends and family, and all the people he really loves will be there. Maybe his dad won't be played by Fred Durst anymore.
I mean, he out and out said, "This isn't my home. You're not my father," in the scene that hit me the hardest.
Oh my god, that whole... We don't see a lot of his dad, and, like, on a level, I get it, because who the fuck is giving an 11th grader a bedtime?
Right?
Like, motherfucker, really? But at the same time, like, a part of me wondered during that scene where Owen is screaming and has just, like, had his head rammed in the TV, like, I'd like to believe his dad cares at least a little bit. He's seen what he thinks is his child trying to commit suicide and having a nervous breakdown, but yeah, this is the Midnight Realm.
Yeah.
And therefore, everything fucking sucks.
And also, as Maddie pointed out, it's like, no, they're all working for him. So if you go by the Midnight Realm idea, it's like all of these people, all these quote-unquote excuses that he's always making to himself to not think about it until it'll go away, they're all in service of this thing that is actively killing him or her.
Part of the thing that's worth saying is, like, there are reasons why he wouldn't pursue that, you know, when his father's alive, you know, oh, I can't do this because I live with my father. But, you know, after that happens, hey, look at that. He says he's got a family.
And he loves them more than anything.
Who we never see. Here, there's always going to be reasons you can give yourself to not do stuff that you want to do, to not be who you are. There is still time.
Okay, so, see, now I'm just feeling called out as a procrastinator.
Can I just talk about this fucking soundtrack for like 2 minutes?
Okay, should I light a candle to also summon the spirit of Katie Duffy? Shout out to you, Katie. We love ya.
We love you, Katie.
Listen, the Claw Machine song made me officially decide, okay, yep, time to start a playlist called Time to Hurt My Feelings on Purpose.
I have a playlist called Songs to Lay on the Floor and in Existential Dread 2, with the cover icon being that one scene from Lilo and Stitch where Lilo is laying next to the record going, "Leave me here to die."
Oh, boy.
But again, a very Ellie core soundtrack, in that anytime Ellie has recommended me a song that wasn't, like, Tegan and Sarah, I can only describe it as song where the lead singer is recording their vocals from another room while the band is in the room actually with the actual recording equipment. That is not a slight, it is just a style that you tend to gravitate towards.
I like churches. I like artists who sing normally. Modest Mouse sings like someone's chasing with a garden hose, but you know.
I mean, yes.
No, like, the way I sort of like in defining the soundtrack to like describe it to people is, okay, my most listened to song of 2024 on my Spotify Wrapped was Good Luck Babe. Number 2 was the cover of Anthems for a 17-Year-Old Girl from this soundtrack. I must have listened to that soundtrack like a dozen times on my commute the last couple weeks. I probably shouldn't like Psychic Wound as much as I do.
No, same.
Babes. We all need to go to therapy.
I mean, yes.
It has its charm, and there are certain songs where I'm like, I understand, and I think they'd hit me on a day where I am, where it's suddenly 10 p.m. and I really shouldn't be listening to my brain, but unfortunately my brain is an unending ceasing horror. Mm-hmm. Or it's, 6 p.m. on a Tuesday and it's dark because it's winter and I am nothing if not a slightly more intelligent lizard. And it works for the movie. I don't know if I'd necessarily go out and listen to it by myself, as it were. Which is fine. I am not a vibes listener. I am a bangers and bops listener.
That would be a problem.
I do occasional vibes, but the occasional vibes come from interesting instrumentation.
I was just surprised that there was no Snail Mail song on the soundtrack, given that she plays, I think, Isabel? No, Tara.
Yeah, but again, shout out to the cover of Tonight Tonight. Because again, Mr. Melancholy is just one really long Smashing Pumpkins joke.
I do also, like, I have this in my notes. Every movie should just stop for a couple minutes to let a song play. I'm aware, audience, don't get on my ass about this. I'm aware that it's kind of like an homage to Twin Peaks Season 3, which did that at the end of every episode. But, like, yeah, we're just going to stop for a minute. Here's Sloppy Jane. She's just going to play with Phoebe Bridgers for a few minutes. Bye.
Completely different vibe from the Psychic Wound song that I did not care for, mostly because it's just so tonally at odds with the rest of the movie.
Except for that last scene where you're screaming out in anguish because, it's precedented. It's just it's just, for you, slightly in the wrong place. Also, we haven't talked about it yet, but I feel like we gotta. Opening 20 minutes, don't apologize. Ending of this movie, just apologies.
It's, I mean, like, again, it's a I mentioned the abused kid feels. Ask literally anyone I see on a regular basis, especially my romantic partners, how often I just apologize for literally everything.
Yeah.
My therapist told me, and it is a fairly common thing, I think, if you are a child who's being abused, you have no control over it. So an adult is acting in a disordered way towards you, and your brain needs to make sense of it. So you turn it into your fault. And I think that's kind of what's happening with Owen. His emotions about being Owen, he's making them his fault because he needs to make sense of them, and he can't get past that because he's in a state of arrested development. I need to write another thing on this, don't I? Fuck.
Yeah, so before we all go, I assume stuff our faces with whatever food we choose to manifest as our feelings.
Dim sum. A lot of dim sum.
Breaded chicken.
Mac and cheese.
Maybe I'll order a pizza. We'll see.
Is the Force with it?
God, yes. This is a masterpiece.
Yes, but heed any warning you have ever heard about it.
Yeah.
And maybe don't watch it as I originally intended to in the dark.
Oh, no.
I was originally planning on watching it in the dark with on my iPad, and I feel like I would have had to have called my mother immediately, even though it was probably 11.
Oh, there's the sequel name. I saw the iPad glow.
But yeah, it is dangerous to go alone. Take a friend to trauma bond with.
I mean, I think I saw the Computer Glow as a reasonable alternate title for We're All Going to the World's Fair. Yeah.
There it is.
I have a rule that a director can't have more than one movie on my top 10 of a decade list. So We're All Going to the World's Fair was in number 2 when this came out. This is in number 1. It's my favorite film of the decade. Obviously, The Force is with it.
I will put it as A Force is with it, with the caveat that it falls kind of in the same category as Noise. Great film. How about I never see it again?
Valid. I do want to see it again, weirdly enough, but that's because I enjoy pain sometimes.
I'd be more willing to watch this again than to watch Noise again, but Ellie can just attest, Noise hurts on a completely different level.
I mean, listening to that episode probably did not help me go into a depressive spiral for a hot minute there.
I'll be recommending this to one of my queer friends when I go home who I think is emotionally stable enough to handle it, and I will not be recommending it to the other queer friend who is not. I don't know if they are an emotionally stable place to watch it.
My work wife, who is non-binary, who in a similar state to you, River, they're not 100% out, especially legally, but they have adopted the habit of whenever they're about to inflict psychic damage on me, just using that phrase that was passed around Tumblr ironically for a while, are you in a good headspace to receive information that may hurt you? So maybe actually use that the way it was intended.
Yeah.
So before we get into Pluggables, I want to do a Pluggable that we are all a part of. Yeah. Dear listeners, on February 1st, Worlds Elsewhere will be presenting a production of George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, directed by yours truly, and going even further in saying, screw your prescribed societal and gender roles.
Hell yes!
So please head over to worlds-elsewhere.com to get more information as it goes up, subscribe to their socials, and please take it away on your personal Pluggables. We'll start with Jazz.
Well, speaking of Pygmalion, I am the host of In Each Retelling, the podcast where we explore all the ways old tales are made new, and technically, because of all the Melia references with Mr. Melancholy, this doesn't not count, which is insane to me. And you can find me a favorite reviewer on all the socials, where I will probably be crying about this for the foreseeable future.
You can find me on Bluesky and technically Twitter. I'm there at least once a week at this point, at Dreams Rebel. You can find me on my own goddamn website, blog.filmlion.online. Where I'm doing the Great MC Rewatch. I just posted my piece about The Incredible Hulk and how I feel bad about how it didn't inspire any emotion in me, because it very clearly wanted to. And you can find me as the host of my own podcast that has no good segue to anything we've been talking about today, The Straights Aren't All Right, in which I gather a bunch of queers together, make them watch straight rom-coms, and try to answer the question, are the straights, okay?
The answer is always no.
The answer is almost always no.
But also, the queers are clearly not okay. That's what this movie's about.
Yeah, the queers are also not okay.
No. That is not the same thing at all. The straights are not okay because the straights are making themselves not okay. The queers are not okay because the straights are not making us okay.
That is so true.
So the real solution is no more straights.
Sorry, yep.
Society's progressed past the need for straights.
At bare minimum, you have to be bi.
I will take demisexual hetero leaning.
We need more bi representation before I'm really content with that. Anyway, but you can find that where pods are cast. And I'm ADing PYGMALION, so there is also that.
I am the host of The Biggest Night in Podcasting, a podcast where I randomly roll up an Oscar-winning movie and we chat about it with the requirement that one person on the episode has to have never seen it before. Sam and River will be on an episode that's going up literally the day after this goes up about The Matrix, which is another trans allegory and one of my favorite films of all time. I hope this movie becomes eligible for my pod. I don't have any faith it will be, but I hope.
Maybe on a cinematography?
Oscars,
Maybe.
I know you hate genre films, but please.
Aside from that, you can find me on Bluesky, Letterboxd, and Medium at LSR42. I have a piece there on I Saw the TV Glow that is apparently devastating. You can also find me on Tumblr at Football in Tuxedos. I talk about movies and politics a lot. I'm not sorry.
And in the spirit of Star Wars, to be there for the people who need us, this episode's mutual fund spotlight goes to Tony Nguyen's fundraiser for Point of Pride to help provide gender-affirming care for trans folks across America. The GoFundMe link can be found in the description for this podcast, as well as on my various socials under my new handle, Demisem. Our theme music is provided by Refractory Period, the two girls, one beat synth-pop sensation. You can follow them on Instagram at Refractory Period, the band. To further support this podcast, please subscribe to us on your platform of choice, leave reviews, and share with your friends to boost our visibility, and consider joining our Patreon. And now, it's time to turn to the Chance Cube to decide where our journey takes us next.
What did we roll?
We rolled a 1!
Is that a 1? Oh god.
It's a 1, so that means our next episode is Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's my turn to talk about my catharsis movie! Because what's more cathartic than punching Nazis?
You got me there.
We will see you all very soon to discuss Raiders of the Lost Ark. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, stay beautiful. There is still time, and may the Force be with you.